One of the best things about the fact that precious metals have gone up so consistently over the last 2 or 3 years, not ironically, since I launched my YouTube channel, is that so many folks have joined this community in part because they have seen these consistent gains with precious metals. Consistent gains always lead to an ultimate end game for a lot of people, at least, and that is it time to sell? So let's talk a little bit about the philosophy of when it's time to sell, when it's time to look for that exit strategy. If you are new to the channel, my name is Dub C, and I want to thank you for being with me here today. If you are brand new to precious metals and stacking, I want to thank you for spending a little bit of time with me. Hopefully this will be worth your while, and I'd love to encourage you to go ahead and click on that subscription button, become part of this community. If you're one of my returning subscribers, I'm looking to you guys for your opinions about this. Have you been thinking about selling? Is the exit strategy something that is on your mind? Because it doesn't happen to me very often, but I have to admit, with the price increases that we've seen, the spikes that we've seen over the last several days, it's definitely something that's occurring to me that doesn't happen very often. If you're new to the channel, I like to begin my videos with a simple disclaimer. I am not a financial advisor. I'm not trying to offer you any kind of financial advice. I'm simply trying to share some of my experience having bought and sold precious metals and rare coins for the last 30 or 40 years. And in this case, I really want to take a step back away from that disclaimer because I'm going to share with you some examples of when I felt it was time to get out of a certain position in precious metals. I'll share with you the dates, the amounts, and you can figure out how much money I was making on something like this. Because of that, I want to reiterate that I can't tell you when it's time to buy, when it's time to sell, or even when it's time to hold. I am a firm believer in helping you, giving you information so that you can make those decisions for yourself. It's one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of YouTube channels or anybody else who tells you that now is the time to buy, now is the time to sell, because they don't know you. They don't know your situation any better than old Dub C knows your situation. So I want you to think about the things that I'm going to tell you and how they relate to your own situation, because I can't give you that kind of advice. I can just share some of my experiences. Let's talk a little bit about when it's time to sell, when it's time to sell your precious metals. Gold right now just hit $36.38 per ounce, and silver at $41.24 per ounce. This is as I am filming. These are the real world prices, and that gets you thinking, is it time to sell? Let's talk a little bit about the philosophy of when it's time to sell. I'll give you some of my experience, some of my examples of where to sell. And some of this information is going to sound a little bit familiar to people who follow the channel really closely. I'm going to tick off a couple of other videos where I talk about this subject a little bit as it pertains to very, very specific things. This video is really about the philosophy of selling whenever and whatever it is that you're going to be selling. So let's dive into it. Prices are up, right? Is it time to sell? Are you sure it's time to sell? When you come to this conclusion, when you start reaching for this exit, and it's time to really start thinking about some of the things that have contributed to the position that you are in now. First off, you probably deserve a pat on the back. You've probably put some money into precious metals over the last several years. Sometimes you get that negative feedback from friends and family who don't really understand the idea of physical precious metals, and that's okay. Not everybody in our community thinks the same way. Certainly people outside of our community don't think the same way. But if you've kind of got a little bit of a stack and you're thinking about it's time to sell, I want you to think about some of these questions. Did you buy long enough ago or at a dip in the price recently that you feel comfortable with your gains? This is a really good question. And for me, especially for pieces that I bought 15, 20, 30 years ago, it's really hard for me to think of that in terms of modern gain. When we think about having precious metals and we think about it going up in price, one of the easiest things for us to do within this community is to discount the idea that non-traditional, non-precious metal investments, for lack of a better word, They pay dividends, they pay capital gains, and they pay interest. Precious metals don't do that, right? So we need to see enough of a gain to have made this worthwhile. If you had taken $500 and bought gold 20 years ago, you would definitely have made some money on it from where the price of gold is now. But if you'd spent that $500 on just an S&P mutual fund, right? That's the S&P 500, a broad array of American companies. That value of that $500 could be higher and significantly higher than the gain that you're looking at with your physical precious metals. So you need to weigh this in terms of real world. Have you seen enough of a gain to really make this worthwhile? One of the best questions that I ask myself, and we'll talk about this a little bit later when I share a couple of examples with you, is there somewhere else to redirect those funds, right? It's easy to think that if you've got a 100-ounce bar of silver like this one, you can walk it into a coin shop, you can take those gains and walk away with it, and you're in Fat City. What are you going to do with that money? If you're like me, those funds seem to trickle through your fingers as soon as you get your hands on them, and you are often left wondering, what did I spend that money on? This is a really important question, and if you are reaching the point where you think that it's time for you to sell some precious metals, what are you going to do with the money that you receive? This is important, right? If you're going to be paying off a high interest bill, I got to say that I am a fan of doing that. Again, not trying to tell you what to do, but this is something that appeals to me. If you have bills that charge a high interest rate and you're able to capitalize on some of the increases in precious metals and pay down those bills, that's a good thing. That's going to pay you dividends, pardon the expression. But I think that's a really logical thing to do. Is there another area? I don't want to say the word investment because that really kind of convolutes things and muddies the water. But if there's something else that you can put these gains into that are going to continue to produce gains for you in the future going forward, this is specifically important if you feel like gold and silver have had a really solid run recently and they're likely to not continue on that trajectory. Is there somewhere else where you can put these funds that you will continue to see these gains? I think this is a little bit more nuanced, but it definitely has some potential, especially if you are fond of looking at other investments or areas where you can put these funds that may produce additional gains for you. Think about those before you sell. Is it time to enjoy your gains? Have you put off enjoying yourself, taking that vacation, buying that car, anything else that is truly enjoyable, right? If you have done that because you have been consistently dollar cost averaging or putting money into precious metals somehow on a regular basis and denying yourself some of those things that you see everybody else enjoying, maybe it's time to just enjoy yourself. And I don't want to discount that, right? This is a gain for you if you have made significant money on this and you will walk away with a profit. Is it time to enjoy yourself? There's nothing wrong with that as long as you're not injuring your future financial success. So if it's now time for you to relax, take that family vacation, do something that is truly enjoyable, something that means something to you, something that you've put off doing because finances were tight, you only live once, and sometimes it's okay to do that, especially if you're doing that with found money like you see in a situation like this. And the last question I want to ask is, are you sure? Are you sure that it's time for you to sell? There is psychological discomfort in ripping away that safety security net, right? That security blanket of knowing that you've got that 100-ounce bar of silver, of knowing that you've got a little bit of gold set aside. If that is gone, is it going to cause you psychological discomfort? Is it going to be distressing for you to not have that safety net somewhere? I have gone through this many times before when I've sold something that I thought was kind of comforting to know that I had. It can be a little bit distressing to have that thing gone. And filling your life or filling that void with something else that you've purchased with the gains that you've received can be just as exciting, just as comforting as having that silver or gold or whatever it is in your life. But think about that. Is this going to impact you negatively? Because maybe that will kind of steer you away from the idea of selling. I just want to give you some general thoughts, right? The question that I'm asked on a regular basis is where to sell. And I told you that I would mention a couple of other videos that I've done. I've done a very popular series of videos about the various things that Costco, a large retailer in the United States and Canada and some other locations, has started offering. Costco is entered into the consumer bullion market, and they've done it in an amazingly powerful way. If you are one of those folks who have gone to Costco and picked up a 10-ounce silver bar, or a tube of silver maples, or maybe even a gold rand bar, or something else along those lines, then you probably don't have a lot of experience in being in the precious metals market generally. My more established stackers, people who are subscribers to the channel for a long period of time, you may have a little bit more experience in this. So let's just recount some of the ways that you can actually exit these precious metals if you find yourself in that position where you think it's time to get a hold of some of these gains. So one of the most interesting thing about Costco, and I hate to keep on bringing them up, but the fact of the matter is that they have made precious metals available to the mass consumer market in a way that nobody else has ever really done before. But the drawback with that, and believe me, I'm a big fan of Costco. I love all of the different various things that they have offered in the precious metals field. They've put a lot of thought into it. They have picked very, very good items. If you've bought something from Costco, breathe a sigh of relief. You got good stuff, believe me. The problem with buying things from a major retailer like Costco is that they won't buy it back from you. So if you've come to the conclusion that it's time for you to exit this position, whatever it is, you have to find alternative sources to actually sell these items. So I'm going to list off a couple of the things that I have experienced personally. And if you are a more seasoned stacker who has sold some things and I don't mention how you got out of that position, I would love for you to leave a comment down below telling me how it is that you were able to successfully sell something. And I am encouraging anybody who has reached that conclusion that it's time to sell, go ahead and look through the comments down below this video. You will find a wealth of knowledge from other people. Don't limit yourself to Dub C. Look at everybody else online, everybody in the stacking community on YouTube, but look through those comments also. You will find information that will probably pertain to your direct situation. Person to person is a good idea, right? This is when you can actually sell to somebody you know, or maybe even somebody you don't know. You can advertise locally in a website like Craigslist. You can find somebody who might be interested in buying directly from you. There are peer-to-peer channels online. If you're not familiar with Reddit, there is a very active precious metals community on Reddit. This is a social media site. There are associated sites on places like Facebook Marketplace. And there are startups that have actually done a pretty good job of connecting less commercial people that are maybe vest pocket dealers or maybe even just individuals who are interested in selling precious metals and buying precious metals from other people that are interested in precious metals. I'm thinking specifically about the new channel or the new website, Pure Metals. Go ahead and give them a look too. Nash is one of the people that is behind that project, and he is active in the online YouTube community. Definitely take a look at that also. So there are lots of positives to do with that. When you're selling person to person, you're probably going to realize the best gains. You're going to get the best prices. But there are difficulties associated with selling person to person, especially if you're selling online, but even if you're selling in real life, in the real world, right? This is dangerous. You're talking about potentially large sums of money, and you will bring out the worst kind of people who are interested in making a buck, or maybe even worse, trying to take advantage of you via physical violence or any other thing. Person to person can be dangerous. If you are going to be selling to an individual in your community, and I've mentioned this before in the video that I made about selling Costco items in particular, because I recognized pretty early on that people who were buying from Costco probably wouldn't have the experience in selling these items. And again, Costco won't buy these items back from you. There are many local police stations who have rooms where you can conduct this kind of trade in person with at least a little bit of security, knowing that the cops are right there, right? The benefit to doing this is if you find somebody locally who would like to buy items from you and you tell them that you will do this at a police station, if they say no, that's a good indication that you don't want to deal with that person anyway. Even if you do use a local police station, some libraries have these kinds of rooms also. if you take advantage of this kind of thing. Keep in mind that somebody could follow you in your car back to your home. So use an ounce of caution, right? Use precaution with this. This is the best way to capitalize on the most money, but it is not without problems. Think about this before you go through the process of selling in person, peer to peer, person to person. And when you're selling online, take advantage of the opportunities that places like Reddit's Precious Metals Marketplace or Pure Metals has. When you're dealing with people that have a little bit more experience, you're less likely to have a deal go sideways. I think that's an important thing. And if it doesn't gain you quite as much money, then maybe it's okay. If you are not familiar with a website like eBay, this can be a little bit tricky to learn, especially if you're in a pressure situation where you feel like you really want to take advantage of the prices where they are now. This is something that somebody who has more experience is probably going to be able to use easier than somebody who's never seen it before. So while I don't want to discount eBay, if you haven't used it before, it's probably not the best place to start, right? This is something you need to take your time with. So we've got person to person, in person. We've got peer to peer through online sites like eBay, like Pure Metals, like Reddit. Your local coin shops, I think, are a fantastic wealth of knowledge, and they will probably buy these things back from you. Not everybody has a local coin shop within their community. But if you look online through Google, you should be able to find coin shops probably within 20 or 30 miles of you. Not everybody, but most people probably have a shop that's that close. The benefits to dealing with a physical coin shop is that you will be keeping those funds local. I'm a big fan of doing that. Support your local shops when you can. If you're taking something in to sell, they may actually have options that you can kind of rotate into if you don't need all of that money. A local coin shop is a fantastic source. Definitely use them when you can. Keep in mind that a local shop has a physical location. They have employees to pay. They need to keep the lights on. They need to make a profit. So your windfall, the amount of money that you make from selling your precious metals in a local shop, may not be quite as much as it is selling peer-to-peer, person-to-person. But there are advantages also. It's usually pretty safe. Those funds are usually received immediately, right, in the form of cash even. And the fact that you can walk out of that store knowing that you are done with this deal and it's something that happens on a regular basis with these folks who have a local reputation to uphold, I think this is a really worthy thing to consider. In fact, I have sold locally and I've always enjoyed that experience. So this is definitely something that you should keep in mind if you have come to the conclusion that it's time to exit. A little bit of immediate payment, a little bit more secure, but also lower prices. There are national dealers who will buy from you, and I'll talk about that experience with me in just a second here. So there are online bullion retailers. There are a host of them. They're pretty easy to research. Look up online retailers, look what their inventories are like, look for their reviews, customer ratings. And when you don't have a local shop or you don't really like the idea of selling person to person in person, then an online bullion retailer is actually a pretty solid resource. Now, I've said before that especially if you're dealing with things that you've picked up at a place like Costco, people ask me routinely, should I take those gold bars out of the assay cards? Assay cards, those fancy packages like the one you see here. Should I remove these from the plastic wrap? When I'm buying brand new modern bullion, typically I tell people keep that in the original packaging. That original packaging is important when you go to sell. If you are going to sell to an online bullion retailer, you need to contact them. You need to tell them exactly what it is you have. I have a 1 ounce gold bar from Rand Refinery. I happen to buy it at Costco. It's in the original package. I've never opened it up. And those online bullion retailers, if they are trying to buy merchandise, and they do most of the time, will give you a quote for how much they will pay for it, and then they will give you a short window in which you have to ship that product to them. This is important. You need to know what it is that you have. If you've got a receipt from Costco, if you can look at this item and determine that this is a 10 ounce silver bar that I bought from Costco, or a 10 ounce bar from Silvertown that I bought from my local dealer, if you can tell them as much information as possible, they will give you a solid quote. You'll have a week or so to send it to them. in which that quote will remain live. If you miss that window, they're going to probably recalculate how much that is worth based on whether or not gold or silver has gone up or down since you contacted them. But I've had really good success with this. Payment was not quite as fast as it is with a local shop, but it's also a little bit more anonymous. And if you don't really want people knowing your business, if you don't like your local shop, selling to a major online bullion retailer is not a bad idea. At least it's something, right? Overall, I want you to consider when you are reaching the conclusion that it's time for you to sell, especially if you're going to be making money on something. Even if you're not going to be making money, consider the tax implications. I said at the beginning of this video that I'm not a financial advisor. I wouldn't dream of telling you what to do, but you probably have local resources that you can use. If you don't have an accountant now, maybe it's time to get an accountant. If you don't have a tax attorney, maybe it's time to call a local tax attorney. Figure out how much your gain is and what the tax implications are for that. I don't want any of my subscribers to get in trouble with the feds for avoiding taxes. So if you owe tax on something, keep good records. Remember when it is you bought something, where you bought it, how much you paid for it, and then the converse of that, when you're actually selling that, how much you sold it for, when you sold it. And pay those taxes if you're supposed to pay those taxes. Avoid getting yourself into deep trouble. So I told you I would give you a few illustrations of when I've been successful doing this successful. That is a strange thing to say because, again, I have psychological comfort. I love having precious metals, and it does kind of impact me a little bit when I sell something. I am sorry to see it go in most situations. Maybe it's the miser in me, maybe it's the hoarder in me, or maybe it's just that financial conservative in me who wants to have a basis of things that is off the table that I know that I have that I can tap into whenever I need those funds. Something about it always makes me uncomfortable. On March 10th of 2009, I bought a 30-ounce lot from Gainesville Coins. This is one of those online bullion retailers that I was talking about. And I had more cash, and I wanted to make sure that I was protecting my other assets with physical precious metals. So I had been stacking quite a bit up to this point, mostly silver, but also some gold coins, pre-33, those kinds of things. If you're not familiar with it, dig through the videos on my channel. You'll find all sorts of different options when it's time to invest in precious metals or rare coins. But I determined that the least expensive way to go for me at that time made the most sense. So I bought one 10-ounce gold bar from PAMP and 20 1-ounce gold bars from PAMP. They came in assay cards that look very similar to this. In fact, I'll go ahead and show you a picture. I keep pretty good records. This is the 10-ounce bar. You can see quite a few of these 1-ounce bars behind it. If the things that are in the interim in the middle kind of look familiar, you're looking at them. These are the Krugerrands that I've always had and that I've added to my stack on a regular basis. So I picked up one 10-ounce gold bar and 20 1-ounce gold bars. The funny thing about this is that the average price that I paid for this, 10-ounce bars typically have lower premiums. And I was actually paying premiums on top of this, regardless of the vehicle. You generally have to pay a small amount over the value of the precious metals. We call that a premium. I paid $969.80 a piece per ounce for this 30-ounce lot. I know it's kind of strange to think about with gold somewhere in the $3,500, $3,600 an ounce range. That wasn't that long ago, right? 2009 was only about 15 years ago. But I bought these and I loved having them. I really felt like I had taken the sale of another great big asset. I had made some money on it, and now I had exited that asset and put the funds into something that I thought was going to appreciate even more. We talked about that at the very beginning of this video. So at the time, I felt that gold was quite low, and I wanted to diversify and get even more gold. The idea was to get the least expensive gold that I could. I like the PAMP name. I like these PAMP bars. The Fortuna bars are a beautiful bar. But the longer I had these, this was when I really started to formulate my opinion that I don't really care much for gold in assay cards. And there's a reason for that. And I've actually made a 2-part video where I talk about exactly why I don't really care for these kinds of assay cards. Of course, I still have a few examples. These were purchased a long time ago. But I prefer things that I can touch, feel, heft, test, weigh, with my own hands, with my own eyes. And that's really what it comes down to. So I realized that while I enjoyed having the protection that I felt that this gold was giving me, I didn't really care for these pieces in the assay cards. And if there was an opportunity for me to sell these pieces, make a few dollars on it, and diversify from that into something that was gold also, but had more potential to gain, because precious metals bars, other than the value of the gold, generally don't go up in kind of a collector way. That was what I was going to look for. The 10-ounce bar in particular, while I thought it was beautiful, and I really wanted to keep it, I just knew that this wasn't for me. So what I decided to do instead was to sell the 10-ounce bar first. I was going to keep the 1-ounce bars. And if you did math, right, 10-ounce bars at $969.80 a piece, I paid $9,698 for that 10-ounce bar. That was including the premiums and shipping and everything else. On 8/23/11, I took advantage of a spike that had been working for just a couple of months by then, and I sold that 10-ounce bar to APMEX. They are another online bullion retailer. Now, I had really good records. I hadn't taken this bar out of the packaging. It had a serial number on it. I could provide APMEX with all of the information about it. They gave me a quote for what they were willing to pay for it. They gave me a very small window that I had to ship it to them via priority or some other kind of expedited way with enough insurance to cover the cost of the bar. And what's really nice about that is that I sold that bar that I paid $96.98 for on August 23rd of 2011 for $18,880. So I essentially doubled my money on that. Now, I'd asked the question before at the beginning of this video, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to put that money into? I already had the gold, so it seems silly to sell gold to buy gold, right? But I also didn't like the vehicle. That 10-ounce bar was nagging me. There are some things that can happen with a 10-ounce bar. It's not as divisible. It's easier to counterfeit sometimes. So I knew I didn't want to get right back into something else like that. I also kind of didn't like the car that I had at the time. So what I did was I sold that 10-ounce bar, and with my moderate trade-in, actually I think I sold my existing car at that point, person to person, I was able to take that $18,880, nearly $20,000 with my current car, and I bought a brand new car with the money. Now, I did have a basis in that 10-ounce bar, right? That 10-ounce bar did cost me $9,698. So it's not like I got that entire $19,000 for free. But I was essentially able to pay for a third of my brand new car with just the gains from that 10-ounce bar of gold. My other car was another car, so out of pocket was a little bit less than the third of a price of this car, and I bought a brand new car, and it was the deluxe, really nice, no miles on it, brand new out the door car. I'm a big fan of that. This was a lot of fun. I had something tangible. I had something that I kind of needed, and I had something that I wasn't going to have to pay a high interest loan payment every month in order to get. To me, it made perfect sense. You may have different feelings about buying a used car versus a new car. I know a lot of people don't like the idea of buying a new car. For me, it was the peace of mind, and it was definitely worth it. Remember, I tend to be a little bit more conservative when it comes to financial issues. So, that was a successful sale. I would like to think that that was a successful sale. Eventually, I did rotate out of those 1-ounce gold bars to, I don't have any of them anymore, but lo and behold, I still do have the Krugerrands that I showed in that original image of these bars. There's a reason for that. I like being able to hold, test, feel, heft, everything else with gold in my hands. I told you I'd give you another illustration too. This one's about silver. On April 6th of 2010, I bought a poured Johnson Matthey 100-ounce silver bar. This is a Johnson Matthey struck 100-ounce bar, but Johnson Matthey had made those poured bars concurrently with these struck bars. They weren't old, right? Johnson Matthey is a maker that had been making silver bars back in the 60s and 70s. This was a newer but poured style bar, probably from the early 1980s. There was no vintage value to this. There was no extra value to it. It was silver. I bought this 100-ounce bar from an individual, and I paid $1,750 with it. So that was with shipping and the premiums. I paid $17.50 an ounce for this 100-ounce bar. So silver was actually probably somewhere around 15, 16 bucks an ounce when I bought it. On September 9th of 2011, I took advantage of that same price spike that impacted the price of gold when I sold that 10-ounce gold bar a little bit earlier. And I sold the 100-ounce bar to another individual who was a friend of mine online, somebody I'd known for quite a while, for $3,900. So I paid $1,750 and I sold it for $3,900. Was there something that I wanted to put this money into? The answer is yes. In this case, I actually had a goal that I wanted to accomplish. One of my favorite artists had made a series of paintings that were out of my ability to pay for. I do collect art. I'm a big fan of art. And this artist in particular was a genius. And his pieces had recently started being sold through a gallery. And when you sell things through a gallery, the price of the paintings typically doubles because the gallery has to make money too. And in this case, this artist's pieces had gone from around $2,000 for a pretty nice size painting to about $4,000 or even $5,000 a piece. A lot of it had to do with their name becoming much more known as a graphic artist rather than any other kind of art form that they had done in the past. So these paintings, and I found one that I absolutely thought was stunning and I really wanted to own. This painting was out of my price range. And the great thing about this was that I was able to take that silver bar that I paid $1,750 for, and I sold it for just under $4,000. And I used that money to buy this painting. And in so doing, I have had this absolutely stunning piece of art that I can look at every single day for about 15 years now. And it cost me half as much as it would have cost if I had actually paid the cash for it, rather than selling this silver bar, taking these profits and putting them into something else. Is it making me money? Sometimes that's not so important. I actually feel like this painting has probably gone up in value considerably since I bought it. But that's not so important. You don't have to be an art fan. You don't have to be a fan of anything else that's going to continue to increase in value. If there is something significant that you want to put this money into, then it's probably worthwhile at least exploring. What I want you to avoid doing is taking away that security blanket and not replacing it with anything. If you're just going to let that money sift through your fingers and you don't get something like family memories from a vacation or a car or something else that's going to mean something to you, that's really what I would kind of avoid doing. So some examples, some real world examples of when I have been able to take advantage of that time to sell. I was very fortunate, right? The prices had gone up considerably and I made money on it. Now, I have sold at a loss sometimes in the past. I try not to do that. But these are pretty good examples of how you can cycle out of something that maybe doesn't have as much importance to you and use those funds for something productive. That to me is kind of the best way to do it, especially if you're able to capitalize on large gains and take a huge chunk out of what it would cost to buy that thing in the first place, maybe even get it for free. That's awesome too. Let me know what your thoughts are. Have you been thinking about time to sell? Has the philosophy of exit strategy really started to kind of tap into your mind when you see these prices where they are? Are you convinced that the prices are going to continue on this upward trajectory that we've seen for the last 2 or 3 years? Have you come to the conclusion that maybe it's time to get out of this? Are you thinking about selling maybe a little bit of your precious metals holdings? Is this something that you would never ever sell because you're holding on to it for the unknown future or for future generations? Let me know where you are on your own personal journey towards that exit strategy. If you have questions about anything that I talked about here today, by all means, leave a question down below. I'm fond of saying if you've got a question, there's a good chance somebody else has that question. Let's see if we can answer it for everybody. And if you suggest a question that I need to take a little bit of a deeper dive into, I might make a video specifically about that comment or question. I call that the subscriber question and answer video series, and it's a fun way to get a video made specifically for you. You can tell your friends and family about it if you share that kind of thing with them. If you are not familiar, I launch most videos, premiere most videos on Friday evenings. I usually have a video on Friday. It's a brand new video. I am there during the premiere. Maybe you are watching this video with me on a Friday evening. If you are, definitely say hi. I love to premiere videos on Fridays. I love to be able to share that experience with people for the first time. Another reason why you can subscribe to the channel and hit that notification button, and that's the way you will find out from YouTube when I do have a new video coming up. And the cool thing about that is that after these videos premiere, I generally go live with a live stream. Live stream is when you can jump in, make comments, make questions, ask questions, talk with other people in the community. The live streams, as long as we're talking about precious metals and rare coins to an extent, they're pretty much a wide open floor. Often we take a deeper dive into the video that we just watched, but really we talk about anything in the precious metals community, and it's a fun way to start the weekend. These are energetic, exciting things to think about, talk about, meet other people, talk with other people, and get comments directly from me as you're asking those questions. I love the live streams. It's a fantastic way to start the weekend. Always be learning. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as we go deeper into the world of coins and physical precious metals.